title of this week's lesson is Honor. The theme is Believers' highest calling is to honor God in every aspect of their lives. The believer's highest calling is to honor God in every aspect of their lives. We're in Matthew 22, 15 through 22, and 34 through 40. Matthew chapter 22, verse 15. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words. And they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus answered, aware of their malice, said, But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, Whose likeness and inscription is this? They said, Caesar's. Then he said to them, Therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went away. Through verse 22, and then 34 through 40. Jump down to verse 34 through 40. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbors yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. The Pharisees, largest religious group in Israel, the Pharisees focused on keeping the law and oral traditions more than on political issues. They sought to entangle him. This is the only time this Greek word pagaduo appears in the New Testament. It suggests a hunter setting a snare. In letter C here in the using the quick source guide as a guide, the Herodians. These were Jews who were loyal to Herod Antipas. The Herodians likely viewed Jesus as a political, not religious threat. The ethical demands of God's law, similar to the way of righteousness, Matthew 21:32, the way of God there, when it says that partiality, you should know partiality, regard us not the person of men, KJV, not swayed by appearances, ESV. Jesus was not influenced by popular opinion. Now, it does seem like they're buttering him up a little bit here, using flattery to try and unbalance him, but he's not going to be swayed by it. And then he says pay taxes to Caesar. When they refer to paying taxes to Caesar, probably an annual 1 denarius tax paid by all men and women who are not Roman citizens. Originally an actor who, when he says hypocrites, originally an actor who performs wearing a mask. By the first century, it carried a moral connotation related to insincerity and false virtue. And when he says whose image and description is on this, the denarius had an image of the emperor on one side and the inscription of God and high priest on the other. When it says, letter I, render to Caesar, give to Caesar, render there to give what is rightfully due. Caesar was due the tax, but that did not diminish one's ability to honor and worship God. When it says that when it refers to the Sadducees, this was the wealthy priestly class. Sadducees were more political and controlled the temple. Jewish scholars often debated how to rank commands in the law. Quoting Leviticus 19:18, Jesus placed loving your neighbor alongside loving God. One cannot love God without loving their neighbors. 1 John 4:20. The entire of the Hebrew Scriptures rests on the foundation of loving God and loving others. Point number 1, according to the Quick Source Guide, is government authority, covering verses 15 through 22. The Pharisees and Herodians wanted to catch Jesus in a verbal trap so they could arrest and condemn him. They asked him if it was lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not in verse 17. If Jesus approved of paying taxes, it could be viewed as support for the Roman occupation. If he rejected the taxes, it could be viewed as treason against Rome. Jesus stunned them with his answer. Give human governments what they're due, and give God all that he is due. Point number 2 is God's authority, verses 34 through 40. Later, another Pharisee, an expert in the law, approached Jesus and asked him to identify the greatest commandment. Jesus replied that the greatest command was to love God with the entirety of one's being. However, he followed this with a second command to love one's neighbor as oneself. He emphasized that all of the commands and teachings of the Hebrew Scriptures relied on these directives to love God and love others. The believer's highest calling in the summary statements is to honor God in every aspect of their lives. We're called to submit to the government officials and laws. We're to honor God exclusively as the one true God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. The key doctrine is the Christian and social order. Means and methods used to the improvement of society and the establishment of righteousness among men can be truly and permanently helpful only when they are rooted in the regeneration of the individual by the saving grace of God in Jesus Christ. And they cross-reference Romans 13, 1 through 2, and 1 Timothy 2, 1 through 2. God bless you as you teach his word this week.